There you go. So, welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you all here and excited to hear Deborah's talk. And this is our Lunch and Learn series. We try to do two a month on Wednesdays at noon. So we are super excited to have Deb with us today. And I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. I'm excited to be here as well. This is a topic that I really enjoy talking about. And today we're going to talk about us rather than the people that we care for, if we have our own children or young adults with autism, or we work in schools, or whatever our role is. I'd like to just today talk about us, like have an hour that's just about us. And in this presentation, I'm going to answer these questions for you. I'm going to answer just generally, this talk is about polyvagal theory, which sounds kind of fancy, but it's really not that fancy. It's very scientific, but there's people that have interpreted the science to make it really easy for us to understand and apply in our lives. And then what are the three main autonomic nervous system states? What is the I.O.B formula? And what are a few ways that we can help shift our ANS states and feel more regulated? So polyvagal theory is the science of safety and connection. And Dr. Porges is the person who developed the theory. And then Deb Dana came along and was reading his clinical work and said, hey, we need to apply this in a way that's more understandable, that we can use every day in our lives. And so these are all the books that between Dr. Porges and Deb Dana, they have written just recently. His theory's been around for a long time, in the 1990s. However, it's just taking hold now. It just seems to really be growing and people are responding to it more now than ever. So I wrote a book based on Dr. Porges and Deb Dana's work that was just released last February. And I wanted to bring this work into education as an educator. I'm a reading specialist and I also consult in schools, and I work with collaboration between special ed and gen ed with teachers and support staff and getting them on the same page. And for me, polyvagal theory was a great place for all of us to start, and a place where we can all agree this really matters. And when I say transforming classrooms one nervous system at a time, I mean starting with our nervous system, because we have to figure it out for ourselves before we can mentor and share it with our students or our own children. You can contact me. There's a list there of places where you can contact me, so feel free to do that. And then let's just jump in. So what are the three main nervous system states? When we are feeling like we're being threatened, there's different ways that we can respond. As we go through the day, and these are sort of fancy sounding terms, but once you get used to using these terms, you'll find you use them with your family. You'll find you'll use them with the people around you. Ventral vagal, just think of a heart and think of a vent and think of it. We're letting in good stuff and we're kind of giving off good vibes. We're feeling okay. It's not bliss. Life isn't perfect, but we're able to handle what's coming at us pretty easily. We're like, okay, yeah, this happened, and here's how I'm going to solve it, or here's how I'm going to work through it. In sympathetic, we are activated. Most of you know sympathetic is fight or flight. That's a pretty common term we use all the time with one another. I'm in fight, I'm in flight. The question people have is, why is it named sympathetic when we're not really very sympathetic to others when we're in this state? And I thought about that, and I think that the naming of it, we can think of it that we're sympathetic to our own plight. Right now, we're caring about ourselves. We're in an I mode, not a we mode. It's like, I am feeling this particular way. I feel like I have to defend myself. So your autonomic nervous system responds with fight or flight to protect you. And in dorsal vagal, think of a door, and see, I have these little pictures so you can think of it. Dorsal vagal is the oldest in terms of hierarchy, the oldest response. And that is, some people know it as a freeze response, where we just shut down and we can't move. We don't want to move. It's shutting the door to the world. So it can be of extreme threat where something's coming. We feel so threatened with danger that we just shut down altogether. All the body systems just kind of shut down until that threat passes. It can also be in daily life. Dorsal vagal can also feel more like some of these, like helpless. Here's a list of words. It can feel helpless, hopeless, shut down, some shame with something, foggy, disengaged. So in ventral vagal, we feel confident, eager, curious, engaged, safe to take risks. In sympathetic, we're pretty much frustrated, irritated, fearful, anxious, angry, worried, and stressed. And then I just talked about dorsal vagal. So these are the three main states that we go throughout the day. And if you want to think of these states in terms of energy, that's the way I like to think of it. Like in ventral, I'm alert and I'm focused. I'm ready to engage with whatever I need to get done for the day. Whatever's on my list, I'm like, there, I can do it. I can do these things on my list. I feel like I have the energy. In sympathetic, it's like disorganized mobilization. We know we're mobilized and we know we're going to fight or we're going to get out of trouble, by fleeing. It's a defensive mode. We're disconnected from the people we love, usually in this state. People look a little more like enemies rather than friends. And it's a bit of chaotic energy, but it is amped and it is energized. It is, but not in a way that's productive unless we're trying to get out of a really severe threatening situation. Then all that energy and mobilization and all the chemicals flooding our system, that's important. Its job is to get us safe and get out of danger. And that's either through fighting or flight or fleeing. So dorsal vagal is that shutdown, and there's not any energy in the system. When we're in dorsal vagal, it's like we just want to climb into bed, put the covers over our head and say, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do this anymore. And I've been doing so many interviews, and I ask everybody on the call, what state do you think education is in right now? Are they in ventral vagal? Are we in sympathetic? Or are we in dorsal vagal? And invariably, everyone is saying dorsal vagal, meaning we've fought the good fight. We tried to change the system to benefit all students, to be inclusive, to doing all the things that we know needs to happen in schools. And that hasn't worked. And a lot of teachers are just shut down. Like they may still be working, but they're just saying, what I do doesn't seem to be mattering, even though it does matter. So these are the three main states in terms of energy. You can personalize your states. If you don't want to use these fancy terms, it's fine. After a while, they just become happenstance, though, using ventral vagal, sympathetic, or dorsal vagal. You can say, I'm sunny, I'm stormy, I'm foggy, or I'm cloudy. Those are general ways that we can personalize. For young children, we can say, are you a rabbit? You're like, I call them the ready learner rabbit. Are we in sympathetic, like a raccoon that's kind of fighting for their food? They're in the trash cans trying to get what they need to get, or you catch them when they're in the trash can, they fly, they take off. Or are they in dorsal vagal? And you think of a turtle. That seems like a common, I don't know, that's what we would think of when we think of we're in our shell. We don't want to come out. And in dorsal vagal, remember a turtle in a shell, can you get it to come out by shaking and knocking and forcing? You have to, it's a gentle process to get a turtle to come out of its shell. And so you can think of that in terms of if you're in dorsal vagal or somebody is in dorsal vagal. I had a friend who just went through a very difficult grieving process. And I reached out to her and I knew she wasn't reaching out back. She like one word, I said, do you want to walk? Do you want to do something? But I knew it was so cool. When you know this about the people around you, you can relate so much better and you don't take what's happening personally. So I knew she was in dorsal vagal. She was in shutdown. She was closing the door to the world because her grief was too strong. She had to feel it. She had to experience that grief. And then gradually, as she was coming out of that dorsal vagal, we were able to go for a walk. And as we were walking, she started sharing with me what happened. And that sympathetic movement, that gentle, the energy started returning to her system. And then, she can kind of start to be a little more in ventral vagal. We talked, I mentioned in the flyer that we're going to talk about our go-to place within. So we all have a generalized place we like to go when we're getting stressed out. I want to ask you, those on the call, and put it in your chat. Where is your go-to place within? Most of us don't always stay in ventral vagal. We're going to either go sympathetic to fight or flight or to dorsal vagal. So I'll share mine. My go-to place within is sympathetic, meaning not that I'm necessarily going to fight. I usually flee. I usually leave the situation, and I have to go clean the house, go for a walk, go for a swim. Like I have to do something very active in order to go back to ventral. I have a very difficult time if I'm activated going into quietly still, like mindfulness or meditation or deep breathing. Like that is just not my place. That's a difficult place for me to go. Some people can go to dorsal vagal shutdown and also be able to keep a little of that energy on board to do some deep breathing. So I'm curious in the chat, Kate, has anybody put in where their go-to place within is?
Not yet.
All right, come on. If you're on board, I want you to participate. This isn't just me up here. I want you to participate in it. So I'm going to wait until you respond. Where do you tend to go? Do you have amped energy in your system, or do you tend to have no energy and just kind of go, I just don't have the energy to get through the day? Kate, I'm curious too. Where's your go-to place within?
I don't know how to think about it. Kara said dorsal vagal. Hallie said sympathetic. Amy said dorsal and to lack of sympathetic walk. To lake of or sympathetic walk. Sorry.
All right. So why is it important to know? It's important because if you tend to go sympathetic and you tend to fight, or somebody in your household tends to go sympathetic and fight, naming it's really important. There's this phrase, you name it to tame it, but just naming our states helps get frontal lobe on board, helps us to think about, okay, I see myself getting into this state. What can I do to keep one foot in ventral? I like to think of it, Deb Dana's quote is, we have to keep one foot in ventral. How do we, as we see ourselves moving into these different states, as we're being activated, how can we still keep one foot in ventral? And that depends on how safe we feel in the moment. Safety is really huge. To regulate our nervous systems, we have to increase those cues of safety and decrease our cues of danger. It's like this little scale we have going on, a math equation. How safe we feel will determine the story we're telling ourselves about the situation. So your mind creates a story to make sense of the sensations in your body. So through interoception and neuroception, these big fancy words, basically we're able to detect inside ourselves, wow, that felt very stressful to my nervous system. And then we try to create this story as to, why am I feeling this? So for instance, you've reached out to somebody in a text and you don't get a response back. And it's a question you've asked somebody and it's maybe a vulnerable question. You start creating the story like, oh, they don't want to talk to me. Oh, they got mad at what I wrote, and your mind starts saying that's why you're feeling stressed, is because somebody's mad at you. When in reality, the person could just be busy and hasn't gotten back to your text right away. We've all felt that. Right? So that is just an example of our ANS and cognitive story. It's a loop, right? It's constantly, sometimes we think of the stories and then we start feeling the feels around that story. Other times we're reverse. We kind of feel that sensation in our body and then we start making a story to match it. How we're going to deal with all of this and how we're going to stay regulated when we're making our stories and we're feeling our states shifting. It's through this I.O.B formula that I just call it I.O.B formula, and it comes from Deb Dana's really brilliant work. She says that safety cues come from inside ourselves, like how safe we're feeling just from inside of ourselves, from outside in the environment, and between others and relationships. So we watch. We look at the social engagement system. We look to see, are their eyes bright? They have little crinkles around their eyes as they smile. Does this person feel warm and inviting? Does this person feel safe to be around? We're just consciously and unconsciously working through this all through the day. So you can take these signals from inside, outside, and between, register your safety, how safe or dangerous you're feeling, and then also say, well, what do I do about this? How do I bring on more safety when I'm not feeling very safe? And we're talking about ourselves right now, but I know some of you are thinking about your own children, your young adults. My daughter's 27, just moved into an apartment with us with a roommate, and she was able to do it because of this information. That's why I'm so eager to share it, because it's so powerful. The whole time, I know this was a big, scary step for her. She wanted it. She asked me to move in to her apartment. She wanted to be more independent, but I knew the reality was going to be scary because she's been with me for 27 years. We're tied at the hip. I know everything about her. She's non-speaking. I can read her mind. I swear, I know. I can just read her face and I can know. But the whole time we were making this transition, I kept watching her nervous system. I kept watching for those cues of safety and danger. And every time I saw the danger cues coming on, she'd start to cry, she'd start to miss me, whatever. I would find the cues of safety. Put on a Minion movie, get her some popcorn. Like for her, that's a very safe feeling. She gets back into her body. So we just be thinking in terms of inside, outside, and between. Now, here's a little interesting thing I want to share. How safe we feel and how well we are able to go back to ventral depends on repairing and retuning the nervous system. And how do we do that? Whenever something happens and we feel kind of out of sync with our partner or our own children, and there's a little argument that starts to happen, the small little things we call miss and mends. Leanna Ray's a social worker, and she and I met every week when I was writing the book to kind of translate this into education. And we came up with this continuum. So on one end, we have our cues of safety, and we're connected to other people. Like we know who our resources are around us that help us feel more regulated. But even those resources in our relationships, we can have these little miss and mends, and they're just small things. But the mending is what keeps the small things from becoming big things. And if we're parents of children with autism, can be a very stressful place. And that can put pressure on our own relationships with one another. Even though we love our partners, that can just, because this other person's dysregulated in our lives, it can make us feel a little more dysregulated. So if we can pay attention to the miss and mends and repair those, mend them, say, hey, I'm sorry. I noticed I was a little bit sharp right there. I was just dealing. I mean, this happens to me quite a bit when I was dealing with my daughter. I'd be like, oh my gosh, we'd have this episode, and I'd go back and and I would go back to Robert, and he could sense this on me. I'd say, it's not you. If I was a little bit sharp, I'd say, here's what happened. So I'm mending that. I'm repairing it. And then the nervous system goes, okay, I'm safe again with that person because the repairs have been made. Ruptures and repairs are bigger. They're when we feel we've been harmed or we're scared or somebody might hit us or somebody has hit us. What is the repair for that? And if these repairs aren't made, that's when we get overwhelmed. That's when we get burned out. That's when we say we've had enough. And when we don't feel safe with those people anymore or in that environment anymore. And then breach and builds our trust situations where something has happened that has really made it so we can't trust that person or that experience anymore. Those are really huge. Breach and builds will take a whole community. That's if there's violence in the community and something happens, that's where we have to bring on our police and our counselors, and it's a whole team effort to rebuild that community. Ruptures and repairs are more where we need our counselor, our therapist, our behavior person to help us with that, to help work through that process. Miss and mends we can usually handle between the two people. Usually that's something that we can handle without needing extra care from a team or a community. And as you see, if we go from miss and mends to breach and builds, we get more cues of danger and more disconnection. And so we have to work on increasing those cues of safety and increasing the connection and get reconnected in that environment or with the people that we're with. I call this interactive regulation because we talk a lot about self-regulation. We want our children to be self-regulated. We're supposed to be self-regulated, but really our regulation depends on that I.O.B formula. It depends on where we are, who we're with, how we're feeling in the moment inside of ourselves. Do we have the capacity to be regulated right now? Maybe we don't. And do you know that actually, we can be dysregulated, but be regulated. And what I'm mean by that is, if we're dysregulated and we name it, we say, wow, that was really dysregulating to my nervous system. If we're able to say, yeah, boy, I can feel myself moving into sympathetic. Yes, I can move myself. I can feel myself moving, shifting from sympathetic into dorsal, because sympathetic didn't get me out of danger. Now I'm shutting down altogether. Naming it, being able to recognize it, is a form of regulation. So there's this myth I feel out there when I'm watching YouTube videos and things about we have to be regulated so our children will be regulated. We have to be able to recognize regulation and recognize dysregulation. And we're not necessarily going to cause everybody around us to become dysregulated. If we're dysregulated, our energy will impact. And just saying to somebody, that was dysregulating to my nervous system. And a part of me was overwhelmed by what just happened. Not all of you. Like when you say, I'm overwhelmed, I'm so overwhelmed by this experience. A part of you is maybe the mother part of you, or the father part of you, or the husband part of you, or the wife part of you, or the friend part of you. But not all aspects of yourself. Not everything in your life is just regulating right now. And I think that's really important language to say a part of me is, instead of all of me is. Right now, part of me, my mother, part of me dealing with my daughter feels a little dysregulated. You could say that and still be regulated with others around you, your other children, your other relationships. So I want to move from this constant focus on self-regulation to the realization that we regulate with others in co-regulating situations. We regulate through the environment we're in. We regulate from within ourselves and how much capacity or energy we have to regulate at that time. Dysregulation is disconnection from regulating resources. It's that, like in my mind, it's that simple. When we can keep track of what our regulating resources are and explicitly state them and know where to go, that's the key to staying regulated in a world that's set out to cause us to be dysregulated. Let's face it, the world's kind of a dysregulating place. Every time you get up in the morning, right away, things start happening that can cause us to become dysregulated. So being aware of that and saying, well, where are my regulating resources? I like to think of it as a little ventral path. This is what a thing I've created for schools and for children to understand, young adults, is that throughout the day, we're either heading toward our goals, heading toward what we need to get done, heading toward building the relationships we're wanting to build, or something's in the way. So if you think of yourself as being on a ventral path, where are you right now? Think of a goal or something you're trying to accomplish that you want to accomplish today. Are you, got your backpack on and you have your resources in your backpack and you're hiking along through the day and you're like, I have the resources I need to get this done? Or are you saying, okay, I don't really want to do this. I'm in fight about this. I'm in flight about this. There's a tree. Think of a tree is falling on your path and you have to say, I'm going to saw through it. Am I going to climb over it? Am I going to go around it? Or am I just going to sit here and look at this tree that's fallen in my way and say, I can't go anywhere because I have a tree in the way? And you're just kind of stuck. Or are you just barely on the path? Your backpack's not on. It's just sitting there. There's no resources inside of it. It's empty. There's nothing that's been filled up in your backpack to help you hike, to help you get to where you need to get to today. So that's in dorsal. So we have ventral is the backpack's on, ready to go. We have sympathetic, the backpack's a mess. It's like on the ground. There's papers everywhere. It's very disorganized. And then we have the backpack to signify it's off. It's not even on. There's nothing in it. It's empty. So what are you going to do? So regulation, let's talk about finding our inside resources. Some of you already have those, and some of you might think, oh, I need to go get a little bit more of those inside resources. Some people are into mindfulness or meditation. They start the morning, good for them. That is not me. I'm usually a little more energized in the morning to kind of get quiet. I know a lot of people can do it, and that's an inside regulating resources for them. what you think about, who the people you think about can be an inside regulating resource. It can be somebody who's already passed away that always said something to you, like, you can do this if you try, or they had some words of wisdom. You can think of those words of wisdom. It's like, what would grandpa do right now? Oh, grandpa would tell me X, Y, Z. So you have these people that live inside of you that are wise. This can be, some people have guides or gurus or people who are a coach, like a learning coach. Those people and what they say and their wisdom can be what lives inside of you that can help you. You could journal write. An inside resource would be, I'm going to go write about this. And I'm learning about writing with the left hand, asking a question with the left hand, because I guess you access a different part of your brain and you might get a different answer than if you ask the question with your right hand. I've actually been doing it. It's pretty interesting. It is interesting what comes up when I write with my left hand, ask the question. So those are some inner resources. And then I teach the kids at school how to notice a name. And this is something we can all use as well. And I'll just teach it to you very quickly. You put one hand over your heart, do it with me. One hand over your heart, the other hand on your belly. And you just notice. You can take a deep breath if you'd like, or you can just shrug. I'm a shrugger. Like, I try to breathe. I try to take deep breaths, but when I'm stressed, it's a little hard for me to do. As I've said a couple of times already, it's really a little bit difficult, and it can be for our students and our children as well. So just shrugging is a nice reset, or sighing. It's a nice reset for the nervous system. Now I'm going to say, where am I? Am I energized? Am I in sympathetic and feel energized? Like I need to move. I need to go. I need to do something. Or am I in shutdown? I'm going into dorsal vagal. Now, since my daughter's non-speaking, I share this with all of you. I can do ventral. We can do sympathetic, sign language for sympathetic, and sign language for shutdown. So we have a V for ventral, an S for sympathetic, and both hands come together for shutdown. So I use those signs. Shalia doesn't sign a lot. I did teach her to read. I'm a reading specialist. So she is able to read. And so she was able to text me. So she does text and communicate that way. But I still use these with her, just trying to get her to, sometimes if she's really can't talk and share and doesn't have her phone and doesn't feel like texting, someday maybe she'll actually do this with me. I don't know. I just remain hopeful, remain in ventral and remain hopeful. So we sign or say, oh, I'm in ventral, I'm okay, or oh, I'm in sympathetic, what do I need? Then I like to do listen, link, move. I like to move before I think, like do a little bit of gentle movement. One of the things you can do is just with the palm of your hand, press with your thumb all around the palm. It's an OT thing that I've learned, a strategy of deep pressure. And I do that. Take a deep breath or shrug or sigh and do the other side. And then you can also squeeze up your arms. You can squeeze your legs, your thighs. Just get yourself back into your body. That's what this activity does. Sometimes it's just crossing our arms and just patting like this, 70 beats per minute, like the heart, 72 beats per minute. And that tapping helps get us back in our body and get that frontal lobe, that executive functioning, that logical reasoning back in and say, now what do I need? Now, what do I need to move forward on this ventral path? What do I need today to get what I need to get done? And sometimes it might just be, I just need to be quiet for a moment. Sometimes I just come into my room with Shalia, my daughter, when I see myself starting to go into sympathetic, because I want her to do something she won't do. I just go in my room and I do this. I actually do this. So I use it and students use it. And I hope you will try it and see how it feels for you. And notice at the start how this feels, and during and then after, and if there's a shift in your states. So regulation from the outside is, what do I have outside of me? Is it going out in nature? Is it writing a plan, like I still have a physical plan book, old school. I write it down. There's something so comforting for me when I'm feeling stressed to look at, well, what's my schedule looking like? What can I take out of it? it's really full today. What can I shift? What can I move? So maybe it's a plan book organizer. Maybe it's a space. This is my writing space that I created. I love this space. When I go into it, it just makes me really regulated and ready to write. Maybe it's a space outside. You just go for a walk in nature. You go for a walk in a park. You go someplace that nature is very regulating for most of us. So what are your outside resources? I want you to be thinking about this and actually write it. Like actually say, okay, inside, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my outside. So think of yourself today as packing your backpack. What are you putting in it? And then this is a school in South Africa that the OTs went on a mission and brought the school moves materials with them. And this is an outside regulating resource where the students know, oh, when I'm feeling a little antsy or unfocused, I can do my heavy work. This is a particular jumping activity where they jump from left to right, and it's heavy work and helps regulate their nervous system. So that's an outside resource for the children. We also in schools create push places where they can go and do heavy work and push. You can have one of these in your home. You can have a place where you put handprints, and they can be yours. They can be anybody you're living with. And you actually do a little bit of wall push-up like you see here in this diagram. You just kind of get at an angle as long as your floor isn't slippery, and you just push against the wall. And if you want to invite somebody to do that with you, that's co-regulation. Like somebody who has a regulated nervous system can come with you and say, I can do this with you. I'm regulated right now. It's lovely when you're dysregulated and you can ask for somebody to say, you know, I'm dysregulated. Can we sit and can we talk? And are you regulated enough to hear what I have to say and hear what I'm going through? And that person can say yes or no. No, I'm just too busy. Can we meet back up at 5? Or yeah, I'm free right now. You know, even in the office, like, are you free right now? Are you regulated enough? Because I'm really becoming dysregulated because this has happened in the office. I'm really upset about it. Before I write emails or say something I regret, can I sit down and co-regulate with you? Are you okay in a place where you can listen? And where I can trust you to listen and not share that with others that I don't want it shared with. Between others and relationships, I thought this was a cool picture because we're going to talk about anchoring, because that's a big word that Deb Dana uses, being anchored in Ventral. So between others and relationships, who is it that you have that you know you can go to? Few of us regulate alone. I mean, some like to go into our room, close the door, and try to solve the problem. But a lot of times we're saying, oh, I wish I had somebody I could talk to about this. Who are those people in your life? That's how we anchor in Ventral. We anchor from inside, outside, and between. I'm going to say, I know I've said it a lot in this short hour, but I really want you to get it. So Deb Dana wrote a book called Anchor, and it's really good. It's a book personally for our own benefit. It's not just a mental health book for the mental health community. So she calls it being anchored. And you think of it in terms of you're in the water, you're in your boat, you're anchored. The anchor keeps you from just floating off adrift, right? But you still can move, right? You can still move in and out of those states. And the key is don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck in sympathetic or dorsal vagal. When you're there, say, how do I move out of this state? How do I get 1 foot back in ventral? Keeping 1 foot in ventral requires, there's a few little tweaks of our thinking. We always think we don't have enough time, which I'm going to look and check. Okay, I still have time. We don't have enough time, but time can be micro moments. They can be these small little moments that we acknowledge, and we just take a pause and we say, right now in this moment, I'm safe. Right now in my environment, I'm safe. And right now I'm safe with the person I'm with. You just take a brief moment to acknowledge, I'm okay. I'm okay right now in this moment. Microconnections are not iPad connections. They're not our friends online. They are not. Microconnections are those people in our lives that we can connect with. And just sometimes I tell teachers in the classroom, a microconnection can be looking at a student and just giving them a smile. They've been seen, you connected. walking by a student and putting a little post-it on the desk that says, "Hey, great work!" exclamation point. What a difference that makes for that child to get that little post-it. Like, oh, somebody noticed. They're simple, they're quick, they're micro. And we need to do more of that to stay in ventral. We also need to look at glimmers. And Dana calls glimmers just those sparkles. I call them sprinkles of joy, like sprinkles of light, where you might be having a lousy day. You can give glimmers to someone else. You can receive them and you can notice them. So here's an example of a glimmer, like, oh, a nice little kiss from somebody that I love, right? It's a short, but our brain, okay, what happens when that, in this situation, this little girl's kissing, this person, presumably probably mom, but her mind's like, I got so much to do today. I have so many things. And she didn't even really acknowledge this wonderful gesture of love. So take that time to go, oh, that kiss felt so good. Or sometimes a hug in the middle of the day, somebody that you care about. Just, I'll do that. I'll get a hug from Robert and then realize my brain was busy. I didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, pause and go, oh, that hug felt really good to my nervous system. It nourished my nervous system. Around here, it could be seeing the cactus bloom, just noticing as you're driving. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Look at the cactus in bloom. Or our sunsets are amazing. Those are glimmers, right? Taking time from our busy stress, all the things we have to do, and just, there's a lot of beauty around us. And I love giving glimmers to someone. Like if I'm out and about, it is so cool. If I see somebody who's got a cool shirt on or something, or I'll say, or the color, I'm a color consultant, so I also do personal color palettes for people. I'll say, that color looks fabulous on you. You just shine when you wear that color. That person just like, I do that quite a bit because I notice people and the colors they're wearing, they just perk right up. And I know their whole day they thought about, wow, I picked the right color. I look really good in this color. And it makes them feel good. So that's another strategy too, is like when you're feeling in dorsal vagal, maybe pick a brighter color, colored top or shirt that you really like. So people will say, that looks really cool on you. So that brings you back in connection with other people. Glimmers, if we give them, helps increase connections, micro connections with other people. So your homework assignment is to start noticing nervous system states around you today. And you might not notice yours at first. I mean, it's sometimes easier, like everything else, it's easier to notice other people. Like you can figure out other people's problems and, oh, they should just do X, Y, Z, but your own, it's a little bit more difficult. So think about as you're going through the day, if you're in Walmart, I mean, just look around, you will see children, in sympathetic fight or flight on the floor screaming. You're going to see some other people, pushing their cart and they're kind of slouched and they don't look very happy and they're kind of like dragging their buns through the day. They're kind of in dorsal, right? And nothing I do really matters. And I'm all alone in this world and that sort of thing. Also, if you want to teach others after you've figured all these states out for yourself, do it through stories you're reading. If you read stories at night, or somebody's reading a young author book, like the characters in the stories go through these events when they're on their ventral path. And if you're watching a movie, oh my goodness, once you understand the world through this lens of polyvagal, through this lens of safety and connection and their nervous system states, you start seeing in the movies, oh, that actor is in dorsal. Oh, what did they do? What were their regulating resources? How did they get out of dorsal? Who came along? What came along? Did the dog come along? Animals for us can be ventral resources. And then, or they're fighting and there's all this fighting going on that's sympathetic, right? Oh, these actors are in sympathetic. And how in the movie, how did they get back to ventral? It's like the hero's journey, right? How do they get back to connection and feeling safe? And that's what I would encourage you to do today. Now, there's other states, there's blended states of play, and there's blended states of quietly still. And those states, so just briefly, play is a state of ventral with sympathetic, because you need energy, right? You need that playful energy. And what happens in a playground is when a fight breaks out, like you can watch two children playing and they're having a great time, then all of a sudden they start fighting. What happened? Think of it as sympathetic quit holding hands with ventral. So now you have all this energy, this mobilized energy, and it's fight, instead of this collaborative, cooperative energy of ventral and sympathetic. So play is really a nourishing thing for the nervous system, but if somebody's had a lot of trauma, play can feel unsafe. And that's a whole nother topic on trauma. And the more trauma we've had to our nervous systems, the more we need that reparative continuum I talked about, the more we need to look at our nervous system states and start to understand. And the more we need to say, right now, in this moment, am I safe? Like, I may not have been safe in that moment as a child, or if I was at war, those times I wasn't safe. Right now, no. Feel the ground underneath you, feel the floor underneath you, look around, sense 5 things, like I can see, I can smell, I can hear, those types of strategies to get present. And doing the dots, like I talked about, the pressing the palms, that really helps get us into our bodies and get us more present. So that's your kind of fun play assignment. Is I'd like to see tonight, as you're watching the news or you're watching a movie, I don't know, just start looking around and you'll start going, sympathetic, but dorsal vagal, ventral, that's a nice ventral. And you'll find you're going to be gravitated toward people who tend to be able to get into ventral easier, who tend to be able to stay. And it's not realistic. We're not going to stay in it all day. Don't beat yourself up. The cool thing about all of this that I love about polyvagal theory and Deb Dana's work is that we befriend our nervous system. Like, we start to understand it. Instead of being the harsh critic, like, I can't believe I yelled, or I can't believe I did this. It's like, oh, okay, I did that. What can I do next time? And I can see this is where I go when I get triggered by this. And here is my backpack of resources, and those backpacks change. Depending on where you're going. I have a friend whose parent has Alzheimer's, and she says, my backpack when I go visit my father, it was her father, when I go visit my father, is I have a board, because if I write on the board and I show him, he gets it. But if I say something to him, he doesn't understand. So her backpack's a little different depending on where she's going. So you will pack your backpack depending on the day, where you're needing to go. So if you're interested in learning more, I have a pretty robust YouTube channel with a lot of good videos. And you can join my newsletter. I send out interesting, mostly not in the summer, but when school starts back up is when I usually quit my newsletter in the summer. And then I just thank you. We have a little bit of time for questions. I hope there's some questions. It looks like there's 11 comments in the chat. So yeah, Kate, do we have any questions?
I think that we're waiting for somebody to type them in. We don't have any yet. Everybody was answering the comments in the chat. Was everybody answering your dorsal?
Okay, so I'll ask you who are still on. Are you going to do your homework? You can say yes or no. I'm curious. Are you going to look around today and notice your nervous system states and notice the states of others in books? Like, even when I read books, I notice it. Oh, that character's in dorsal. Oh, that character's in sympathetic. It's really interesting.
Fascinating. Everybody's saying yes. And JM Cloud says homework. Yes. Thank you, Deb. I'm glad you're excited about homework. Yes. Everybody's saying yes.
Well, hopefully I've given you a fun homework assignment.
Love it. If anybody has any questions, you can come off mute too and just shout them out to us if you have anything you need to say.
I'll stop sharing and then we can.
Oh, that works.
I can see everybody. Yeah, those who have their cameras on. I'd love to just chat. So, if you will, like, what's one thing you got out of it today? What's one thing you feel like you could use? You spent an hour with me. Hopefully, it was worth your time.
Someone said they'd love to play this for their staff development. I will be sending out the recording, so you can do that.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's an excellent reminder for myself to keep myself in that ventral vagal, or be aware when I flip out of the, either dorsal or ventral, whatever. It's a good reminder. Thank you so much. And I do dots and squeezes all the time. I'm an OT, so I do it with my kids. I do it with myself. I do it with my grandson. So, and it just a quick little something to check in and keep moving.
It's simple, easy. That's
Mhm.
what we need, just on the fly, something that we can do.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Deb.
you.
Wonderful tool to have in your backpack, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Simple things. So
Right, so you will email the link for that time, because I really want to share it with the teachers that I work with.
yes, I will email the
Yeah.
link. I will be posting it up on YouTube, and I'll email the link to it. It'll take me a
Okay.
little bit because it just takes a while to download everything, but I'll get it up there and I'll send out an email.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. It's going to be valuable. There's 5 teachers that have gone to the school moves training with me and that use them in their different schools, which is wonderful. But I want to keep that information fresh, especially at the beginning of this next coming school year. And this video would be the perfect connection.
Yeah, I think adding the whole nervous system states and teaching ourselves and our students to name it, I think makes everything that we're doing and every program we're using. I feel like you can use it, whether it's social emotional learning, your Castle framework, it doesn't matter, whatever you're using, it just makes it enhances it, it makes it deeper.
Yes.
Our understanding, like why these shifts are happening and where are we right now, and getting to notice and name those shifts. I'm very excited about it. It's why I wrote the book, because I wasn't the expert when writing the book. I was pretty much on a journey of, what is this and how does this, I was asked basically to bring it into education. And I said, I don't know as much as Deb Dana and Stephen Porges, of course. But I said, I went into that. Where does this fit with what I know? Where does this fit with what we know in education? And I think it just holds enormous potential to really solidify everything we're doing and understanding, and even parent meetings and even IEP meetings when they're gathering around and you can see it's so fun because you'll start going, oh, moving into sympathetic. Oh, dorsal vagal shutdown. You can start watching with now judgment. Like there's no personal anymore. It's not like, oh, so-and-so's getting mad at me. It's like, oh, that nervous system is that nervous system is feeling unsafe.
Yes.
Disconnected.
Yeah.
So what am I doing that can increase the cues of safety when I see that starting to happen?
And it helps us shut off our trying to figure out why, because it really doesn't matter why. I mean, yes, it helps to analyze later so we can avoid cues or triggers or whatever, but the most important part is helping that brain, that neural system, calm, get back into vagal, and then we can do something, but don't do anything until then.
Yeah. And Deb Dana will often say with her clients, she works with clients with extreme trauma. She's really knowledgeable about trauma. She'll say, I ask them to set their story aside. When they come see me, I first say, let's talk about your state. Where are you? And then, because she said the story will change when you tell it from a different nervous system state. So if I tell the story from sympathetic, it's a fight flight story. It's an angry story. When I tell it from dorsal, it's a sad, shut down, disconnected, lonely story. If you tell the story from ventral, you're like, yes, and this happened to me. And I can see the possibilities of what I can do to repair what's happened, or I can't repair it. So how do I accept it? That sort of thing, right? And I love that idea when it's kids coming in off the playground all upset. You're like, hold on. Let's name your state first, then tell me the story. Because it really, and do that little listen, link, move, and think. And because it shifts. And then that story sounds a little bit different.
Yeah.
I will, yeah.
I have a couple comments. Hallie said, I like the visuals of ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal, and now have a mental picture of what I'm talking in my head about what's going on around me. That's pretty awesome. And Kara said, the language is helpful in naming states and helping teens and young adults to discuss. Tony said, thanks, Deb. Do you have the new poster with calming strategies available?
Oh, the listen, link, move, and think. Is that what people are wanting? So I'm wearing, I know, like, yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm book 2 is all the activities. Book 1 was like the theory, the meat about us and, mentoring and all that. And then book 2 are activities. And I'm going to do a new poster set. I have a whole new poster set I'm working on. And if anybody's bought the book, I have a class going on this summer. Do you know? Are you in the class? So some of you are in the class already, but we have a 4-week course going on to talk about the activities and to dive deeper like a book club. So we have that going on right now. If you aren't part of it and you want to be and you buy the book and you've been on this call, just email me and I'll send you a link to join us.
Okay.
We're only a week in and you haven't missed much. So that would be great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here with me today.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
So someone said, Kara said, side note, so thankful for all your school moves resources. We have helped my students and relatives in ways beyond measure for years.
Oh,
That's so sweet.
that means so much. It really does.
Thank you so much for being here for this. This is amazing information. I'm so excited to be able to share it with teachers and parents and everybody. So thank you all so very much for being here. Thank you, Deb, for talking and for presenting this with us and sharing your information with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'll be sending out an email with the PowerPoint, with the link to the video, and with a survey asking how you guys liked it, if you have any recommendations for future talks. So thank you all so much for being here. And thank you, Deb. And see you all at the next one.
Have a ventral day, ventral vibes.
Awesome.
All right. Bye.